This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
China's crude oil throughput hit a record high in June, rising 3.9% on a daily basis from the previous record set in May as more refineries resumed operations after maintenance. The country processed 60.82 million tons of crude oil last month, or 14.8 million barrels per day, BPD, data from the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, showed on Thursday. That was up from 14.25 mlnbpd in May, and was also higher than 14.08 mlnbpd in June last year. Total throughput during the first half of 2021 reached 353.35 million tons, or 15.13 million barrels of oil per day, up 10.7% from the same period in 2020.
Fresh travel restrictions due to a resurgence in COVID-19 infections have dashed hopes for a recovery in Asian jet fuel demand this year and worsened the outlook for the entire refining sector as jet supplies mount and erode overall refining margins. While aviation in the US and Europe recuperates on eased lockdown measures and summer traveling demand, Asia's worsening pandemic is expected to keep flights grounded and poses a serious challenge to refiners who are already facing the highest oil prices since 2018 and crude refining margins of less than $2.50 a barrel.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Global electricity demand is growing faster than renewable energy capacity can be rolled out and will require more power to be generated from the burning of fossil fuels, the International Energy Agency, IEA, said in a report on Thursday. After falling by about 1% in 2020 when the COVID-19 pandemic curbed industrial activity across the world, power consumption is set to grow by close to 5% in 2021 and by 4% in 2022 as economies recover, the IEA said in the mid-2021 edition of its electricity market report. Nearly half of the increase will have to be met by burning fossil fuels, notably coal, which could push carbon dioxide emissions from the sector to record highs in 2022, the agency said, adding it expects particularly strong demand in the Asia-Pacific region, primarily China and India.
A U.S. Senate committee on Wednesday passed a bill on climate and energy initiatives that are expected to be debated as part of the wider bipartisan infrastructure bill. The Senate Energy Panel voted 13-7 to pass the bill, which authorizes about $100 billion for initiatives such as helping the power grid handle more electricity from renewable sources, boosting production of hydrogen from sources that are cleaner than fossil fuels, and capturing carbon from fossil fuel plants and other industry before it can reach the atmosphere. The bill, sponsored by Senator Joe Manchin, a Democrat and the chairman of the committee, also includes initiatives to boost nuclear power. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. Consumer awareness of carbon emissions from the production of metals for the energy transition will eventually energize the recycling industry and stimulate searches for substitutes that could spoil the party for miners. Analysts at Wood Mackenzie estimate an additional 360 million tons of aluminium, 90 million tons of copper and 30 million tons of nickel will be needed over the next 20 years under a scenario that limits global warming to less than 2°C. Aluminium, copper and nickel are key materials for electric vehicles, sales of which are expected to soar over coming years.
China's primary aluminium output in June fell for a second straight month, official data showed on Thursday, as limits on power consumption in the smelting hub of Yunnan reigned in supply. The world's top producer of the metal churned out 3.29 million tons in June, the National Bureau of Statistics said. That was down from May's 3.32 million tons, but up 9.3% year-on-year. First-half aluminium output rose to a record 19.64 million tons, up 10.1% from a year earlier, as smelters were encouraged by a surge in aluminium prices to decade highs well above break-even levels.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
Strategie Grains on Thursday further increased its monthly production forecasts for all three major cereals in the European Union in the current 2021-22 season, which it said will help the bloc to meet higher projected demand on the global market. However, the consultancy also echoed mounting concerns over the potential impact on grain quality from recent wet weather in southeastern and western areas of the EU. The consultancy forecast that the 27-country bloc would harvest 133.0 million tons of soft wheat in 2021, up from 131.1 million projected in June and more than 14 million tons above last year's crop.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.